Hey everyone, it's Kong again with another episode of Should You Summon. As always, I'm going to be presenting high-level overviews to help you decide whether this banner is worth your hard-earned vouchers and crystals. It's finally here. We've been talking about it for months now, but the headline banner of this update is the Slayers crossover featuring Lina Inverse and Zelgadis. Any SSR you pull has a 40% chance of being either of them, with the remaining 20% chance reserved for any random off-banner unit in the regular summoning pool. I'll also briefly talk about the free event character Gourry, even though you won't have to summon to get him, so he's technically off-topic. Remember, since these are crossover units, they don't block anyone else's bonds, and they don't need any specific hero to unlock their own bonds, even each other. So if you summon one, at least they're fairly self-sufficient to build. Okay, let's get started with series protagonist Lina. Lina is a magical DPS with a self-boosting enrage mechanic. Her talent gives her +2 range without conditions, and +30% damage when buffed. After her action, or if any ally gets attacked, she has up to a 40% chance to enter her enraged state. If you hate RNG, she also has a 100% chance to become enraged when an ally dies. And hey, we know a couple of good sources of infinitely expendable allies. Anyway, her enraged state grants +2 mobility and +100% hero crit rate on her next attack. It wears off after attacking, or after 3 turns. Her 3-cost skill is a single target spell that increases the enemy's chance to receive a critical hit by 10%, similar to the Faceless troops. It also disables armor and headgear effects, and it deals 1.7 times damage, extra effective against demons. If she's enraged, that 10% crit boost goes up to 20%, the spell isn't affected by melee damage reduction, and she can get up to 60% bonus crit damage. So this ends up being a virtually guaranteed critical hit with a juicy damage mod as long as she's enraged. Other single target options are Fireball and Dark Reaper, and she has Arcane Blast and Black Hole for AoEs. Her unique 2C is a line AoE that's effective against dragons and leaves debuffing tiles. Her unique 1C is a passive that lets her steal 1 buff from every enemy she damages, and gives her preemptive strike against assassins. She's a member of Protagonists, buffed by Matthew and Emperor Lovina, Heroes of Time, buffed by Joshua, Angelica, Yusuke, and the Awakened One, and Dark Reincarnation, buffed by Bozel and Licorice. For content, in PvE, she's on faction for Leviar and Phoenix in the Eternal Temple, and Hugin and Munin and Fenrir in Ancient Beckoning. She's also just a versatile mage with good range, good mobility, and a mix of solid single-target and AoE spells, so you should have an easy time finding a use for her in general-purpose stuff. On the PvP side, something I only gave brief mention of in my summary earlier is actually the key to her success in PvP, and that's Arcane Blast. With her enrage crit boosts and Blazing Sun enchant, she can vaporize some valuable enemy units. She also gets a faction buff from AO, who's not dropping out of Apex boxes anytime soon. We'll talk more about Lina's longevity in the notes for Noobs, though. For her build, Lina generally prefers to be in her mage class. There are simply too many scary horses around for her to try infantry. Blazing Sun is the go-to enchant for milking her critical hit gimmick. Bear in mind, Scepter of Divinity doesn't help her AoEs, so if you want to be able to flex that way, Red Moon is of course always a good all-round pick. For her accessory, you can go the Meme Lord route and give her Holy Cross to boost effective damage against those poor mages even further. Or you could go the other Meme Lord route and give her Dropnir, since she has access to Crystal Warlocks for maximum reflectage. Okay, let's move along to Zelgadis. Zelgadis is a sexy blue rock mage with some incidental support in his talent and a bunch of single-target spells. His talent increases his damage dealt and his defense the higher his hit point percentage is. After he takes action, he can choose an ally to dispel 3 debuffs, heal 10% HP for each debuff removed, and grant a slate of tasty immunities: stun, buff block, and mobility reduction, plus 1 bonus random buff. This boost then goes on a short cooldown for 1 turn before it can be used again. Sounds pretty good for Bulk Lord enthusiasts so far. His 3-cost skill is an int stacking focused 3-range single target spell. It passively gives him 10% damage reduction whenever he's fighting someone with lower int, and that's 20% if he has no debuffs. It's normally a 1.7 times damage attack that's effective against demons, but if he has no debuffs, it also strips 5 enemy buffs and refills his own HP before combat. If his int is triple the target, he hits the hero directly, just like a smart blue Omega. He has 2 unique 2C skills, both single target attacks. His unique 1C boosts his int and lets him move 2 more spaces before acting again. It also makes him unaffected by melee damage penalties, which is kind of funny since basically all of his skills have that built in. Incidentally, that's the reason why Scepter of Divinity is not the greatest choice on him, because he can't benefit from it for most of his skills. He's a member of Mythical Realm, buffed by Gizarov, Sage of the Trees, and Isolde, Heroes of Time, buffed by Joshua, Angelica, Yusuke, and the Awakened One, and Strategic Masters, buffed by Lanford, Altemuller, and Grenshiel. For content, in PvE, he's on faction for Phoenix in the Eternal Temple, and Sleipnir and Fenrir in Ancient Beckoning. On the PvP side, he may be of interest to Bulk Lords in Apex Arena because of his almost endless source of free bulk-adjacent buffs. He also has Clotair's 3-ring Fire AoE, which makes him a candidate for Magic Tower Auto Chess when it comes back if you have a spare Clock-enchanted Balance Blade for him. For his build, unlike Lina, Zelgadis has to get over his fear of horses because his infantry class has significantly better HP, int, defense, and skill. It also allows him to equip Gift of Eternal Life, which further enhances his supportive role. For true turtle or tank teams, I'd look at Full Moon for the extra bulk since you won't care about Breeze as much. He can use a damage reduction armor like Forbidden Defender, and since he has an Act Again move, he can get some value out of Fury of Tyr. Accessory is dealer's choice. Something like Star Earring or Dimensional Jewel have nice base bulk stats, and Bond of Arashi is an overall very good defensive accessory. Finally, as promised, I'm going to briefly talk about Gourry. Gourry is the free SSR character you get from doing the Secret Realm event, so please don't try to keep summoning hoping to get him. If you pull Lina and Zelgadis, then you've got everything you can get from this banner. His main gimmick is that he gets massive buffs when he has a lot of buffs. He can get up to plus 50% attack and defense from his talent. If he has 5 buffs, his skills cool down faster. If he has 8, he gets Preemptive Strike, and if he has 10, he gets a Revive. His 3-cost skill also gets up to plus 30% damage, and it doesn't tick down buff timers when it's used. He has a funny, unique 2-cost skill that makes him do more damage against enemies who have better stats than him, and a unique 1C that passively increases his mobility and lets him heal a little bit after acting. He's a member of Protagonists, buffed by Matthew and Emperor Lavina, Heroes of Time, buffed by Joshua, Angelica, Yusuke, and the Awakened One, and Legion of Glory, buffed by Ledin, Elwyn, and Grenier. For content in PvE, he's on faction for Phoenix and Scylla in the Eternal Temple, and Hugin and Munin in Ancient Beckoning. He's not necessarily notable for those fights, but he does look interesting for normal PvE modes like Challenge Bosses or Ragnarok of the Realms. Normally you don't like the idea of your opponent having better stats than you, but against these highly statted bosses, he's basically always going to be doing bonus damage. He's less a burst damage monster like Rio, and more of a sustained output DPS, because he can basically use his big skills every single turn when he's buffed up. For his build, basically just give him a Crystal Stinger, and a Breeze Enchant, which will count towards his buff total when it triggers, and watch him go. Alright, I think it's high time for some notes for noobs. Lina is a big explosion unit who's good in PvE and PvP. She got a lot of hype at release because of her ability to explode enemy units, which is definitely a good ability for an Apex unit, don't get me wrong. What we didn't know at that time, though, is that she's being chased by a long string of OP Apex units, including Apotheosis, Andriao, Nymea, Eshin, and Isolde. The speed of this meta churn basically pushed her out of most boxes, and made her a one-season hero. We didn't really see too much Lina action in the last playoffs in China. If you're the kind of whale who's planning to summon her up to 5 or 6 stars and use her right away, you will get to spend a couple of quality months with her. If you're just going to pull a 3-star copy and shard her up, You may find she's just about ready to go back to PvE by the time you have her all built up. So, I know this is supposed to be a summary section, so that's a long way of saying my verdict a few months ago would have been that she's an easy summon because she's strong in PvP. Now she's still strong in PvP, but just for not as long as we expected. She has a more limited shelf life. But, as always with collabs, if you're a collector or a Slayer's fan, you're obviously going to want to summon her. Zelgadis is a bit more straightforward. I'd say he's more for collectors and fans. He doesn't have a particularly compelling use case, your usual niche bulk fetishists. Gourry is free, you don't have to summon for him, just go get. Finally, my usual reminder about upcoming banners. Next week we'll get a Mariendal and Saint of the Ark banner, plus the routine Langrisser 1, 2, and 3 wishlist banner. The next week we should get a Licorice, Christiane, and Mariel banner, plus the routine Langrisser 4 to 5 wishlist banner. And on the final week of the update, we should get the usual 2 recurring Destiny banners, this time with Alpha, Gizaroff, and Cortez, and the old Ledin, Ultimuller, and Rachel banners. Next month's update will be the 5th anniversary, so expect all the usual anniversary hype. A trickle of new soldiers, a hot new SP class for Bernhardt, shard and gear bags in the shop, new main story chapters, and reruns of the Watham and AO banners, in addition to the launch of a 3rd single-unit limited banner featuring Watham's perfected form, Apotheosis, and free SSR, Captain Mac the Cat. That was all one sentence, I have to fire my writers. But that's it for this episode. My missing Shaltir makes me not want to miss out on any more limited crossover units, so I will of course be trying to summon for both Lina and Zelgadis here. Please cross your fingers and send good RNG vibes to poor old Kong. Maybe I'll live stream this summoning session, I tend to have good luck when I'm summoning live. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, I wish you all the best of luck, I know this is going to be a big banner for a lot of you, I've already heard a lot of chat in Concord and on Maincord about people who've been watching Slayers since they were kids and how exciting this banner is and coming back to the game for this banner. So I know there's going to be a lot of hype and tension and expectation and anxiety out there, so I'm hoping that everyone gets as many copies of these units as they want, in as few summons as they can afford. I'll catch you all in my summoning video, and then in the next Should You Summon. Extra special thanks of course to our Langrisser tier channel members for generously supporting the channel directly. Shout out to Levitt, Kate Soon, Jared Portela, Jerome Meyer, and Harambe for helping mitigate the deep psychological cost of making these videos, and eventually contributing to some higher quality studio equipment to continue making them even more fun. Thanks everyone.